The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. I'll tell you what happened with my jury duty momentarily. A few stories I've been meaning to get to. First of all, NASA has offered to show NBA basketball player Stephen Curry proof that the United States actually did land on the moon in 1969 when he said in a podcast that he doesn't believe that it ever happened. And this is, of course, not an original conspiracy theory, but Steph Curry apparently believes that. Now, here's my question, and we could go into what evidence, NASA's offering to show him lunar rocks and all of these different things that a normal person would count as evidence. A lot of conspiracy theorists would say that the supposed evidence is actually evidence of the conspiracy. Like, who knows if anyone would really be convinced by that stuff? Here's my question to you, Pat. Do you think that this string of athletes, particularly NBA athletes, questioning phenomena like having landed on the moon or the Earth being a sphere, do you think that they're serious or that they find it funny to kind of troll in this way?
I do think that they're serious. I absolutely do. And it's mainly because so many people believe in these conspiracy theories as it is. Like, I don't know what the percentages are, but I would say maybe 1 in 10 people think that we didn't actually go to the moon in 1969. And so it's totally reasonable to assume that among the population of NBA basketball players, there's going to be also 1 in 10 people who buy into that conspiracy, and maybe Steph Curry is just one of them. I also don't think that they would create such a media frenzy for no reason if they actually didn't believe in this stuff. Although I think Shaq about a year or two ago said that the Earth was flat, and maybe he was trolling, but these other guys, I don't think so.
Yeah, for whatever reason, the Shaq one also is the one that's in my mind. It's like, could Shaq really believe that? I don't know why. It just seems hard to believe. And Steph Curry says that he's going to be having some conversations with ex-astronauts and that, quote, some good is going to come out of this for sure. It's like the good I can imagine is that he stops saying ridiculous things. I don't know what other good. Maybe he thinks maybe we'll definitively prove we didn't go to the moon, although it's harder for me to imagine that that's the good that will come of this conversation he's going to have.
Well, I think the problem is that Steph Curry is such a famous athlete. He's one of the best players in the NBA. He's maybe the best shooter of all time. And so he has so many fans, so many followers, impressionable kids who listen to everything that he has to say. And I think it could create the next crop of conspiracy theorists, even though it shouldn't, even though we should not, we can listen to what they have to say about issues like this, but we shouldn't take it as gospel. I think he is quite influential, and that's unfortunate.
That's the concern. And Charles Barkley wrote in a book I read one of Charles Barkley's books when I was like 14 or something like that. And he said in there, he doesn't really think that athletes should be seen as role models, that they can be seen as people who play a sport well. And if you want to play a sport well, you can model your game or your training after them. But that beyond that, it's sort of risky to say that athletes should be role models in this way. Unfortunately, it is the case. And that's the most dangerous part, that if it's, whatever percentage of people are predisposed to just follow whatever their stars, athlete people that they idolize say, that's where it is dangerous. And hopefully we'll hear from Steph Curry what we ultimately heard from Kyrie Irving when he said that the Earth was flat, which is an apology and saying, I was wrong and I shouldn't have said that, and now I understand what the truth is. We will see. We will see. The company behind the Sears and Kmart chains on Friday obtained a bankruptcy court's permission to pay as much as $25 million in bonuses to top executives and high-ranking employees at Sears, which, remember, filed for bankruptcy protection a couple of months ago. They made the case that they need to give employees a financial reason to stick around, even though the company is reporting almost $2 billion in losses in the first 3 quarters of 2018, and that under those circumstances, the court found compelling, they need to be able to pay employees what they might be making in equivalent positions at other companies. And this would be $8.4 million in bonuses to 19 executives if some financial milestones are met as part of a much bigger $25 million total package. So let's see. With my understanding of how business works, I know why this is being allowed to happen, Pat. I disagree with the entire context and framing of it, right? So given that the context and framing is what it is in the United States, and understanding somewhat about how bankruptcy courts function and other details. I'm not at all surprised that this was allowed to happen, but it's part of the corrosively destructive system that we have in the United States.
Yeah, it sounds to me like part of the structural problem with how CEOs are paid. It doesn't necessarily have to do with how well the company is doing and how much the average worker or the lowest paid worker is making. It just has to do with how well CEOs at similar companies are doing. And it's insane to me because, you know, you could most CEOs don't make the majority of their money from salary. It usually comes from the shares of stock that they have. But if you have someone who's paid, let's say, $20 million a year, it's certainly possible to find someone who's willing to accept half of that money and do 80% as good of a job, right? Instead of paying someone $20 million, you can pay someone else $10 million and they'll do 80% as good. From a financial standpoint, from a business standpoint, that would be a good bet to make. But that's not what we see happen because they have to be paid on par with how other CEOs are doing at different businesses. And I think that's part of the corrosive culture that we're seeing and that you expressed.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that you have a very incestuous culture on boards of directors, which determine executive compensation. So you can have someone who accepts a job at Sears and makes a deal with those people who are on the board of directors CEO compensation committee, where they say, hey, listen, you know, you're on a board for a company I'm on. I'm going to make you a good deal. We know that Sears is in trouble, but we will set it up so that even if the company doesn't do well, as long as you meet these minor requirements, maybe in terms of revenue or who knows, doesn't even matter, you will still get your really great amount of money. And everybody just basically colludes. It's a form of collusion, right? It's acting together. And that's how you end up with these situations. And then, of course, you defend it to a court by saying, listen, we're talking here about the CEO of a company with $5 billion in revenue, 10,000 employees. Here is what the going rate is, and we are willing to pay them just slightly less than that. And there's no real legal basis. The judge can't simply say, well, you're failing and laying people off, so you can't do that. The judge would have to actually come up with something legally stronger as to why they can't be paid something close to what the CEO of another company with $5 billion in revenue and 12,000 employees or whatever ends up making. And that's how we get the situation we have. We'll see if even these minor milestones are even met so that these executives get their $25 million. Okay, let me talk briefly about jury duty. I was supposed to do jury duty today. I had already postponed it for a year. I had Farron Cousins lined up to guest host for me. I got up this morning. I was on the way to the courthouse, and I arrived there and went through security, huge line for security, line in the jury room. I get in there. They look me up and they say, you're all set. You can go home. So then I immediately got, I think it was like I was supposed to report at 8. By 8:04, I believe, I was already on my way out and ended up being able to do the show. So very unexciting, although from what I understand, this was not a dismissal after checking in. This was a pre-checking in dismissal. Like had I called again at 7:55, the recording might have said I already don't need to go. So this doesn't disqualify me for like 3 years. I could be called back, I think, in the next year.
Oh, that kind of sucks, actually. And I really hope that there's no one who's going to be wrongfully convicted of murder because you weren't selected on the jury. Like, we'd have to hope that the other jurors are going to come to the right decision on a case like that. But we don't know. If you're not in that courtroom, stuff like that could happen.
Listen, I don't know that I was going to be picked for a murder trial no matter what, because from what I understand and from my prior experience, my having a master's degree counts against me. My significant other having a master's degree counts against me. Having family that has worked in, so my dad was a psychiatrist at a number of correctional facilities on a consultancy basis in the past. I made sure to note that because it says, does any family have a history of working in law enforcement, correctional institutions, whatever? I put that. They said, do you have any other connections to law enforcement? And I said, yes, I have numerous, kind of saying a lot here, but I have numerous open cases right now with the FBI about threats that I have received as a result of the work that I do. And if I was actually pulled into a jury that was going to go all week or longer, I was going to tell them, listen, I have a wedding to go to out of the city tomorrow night. as I've told the audience before, and I run my own business, and that business kind of depends on me being able to host my show. So please pick somebody else. And my guess is that even though anything can happen, the totality of that would have allowed me out of anything more than a one-day commitment. Could be wrong, but I think I would have been out.
I understand why connections to law enforcement would make it so that they want to disqualify you, but why does having a master's degree and your significant other having a master's degree count against you? Like, if anything, that tells me that you're more educated and would come to the right decision. It would be more likely for that to happen.
No, they don't want that. From the attorneys I've spoken to who work in criminal defense, they tend to want people that do not have advanced degrees, because the general, knowing without a significant period of talking to each person, the approach that attorneys have told me is theirs is that you want people who are going to bring as little prior knowledge in about specific things. So like, for example, therapists. Therapists, they often don't want, because they may perceive people's actions through a different lens than someone who simply is going to evaluate only the law and the actions that took place. Other attorneys are going to also be evaluating in different ways than the average person might what they hear in terms of witness testimony and whatever else. So from what I've been told from attorneys who participate in jury selection, they tend to want people with high school or bachelor's degree educations, and that is less likely you will be selected if you have a master's degree. And if you have a PhD, it is even less likely you will be selected. I have no idea if that's true, but I took their word for it when filling out my questionnaire. Obviously, I filled it out honestly.
That's interesting. So if you are a graduate of college and you're weighing whether or not to go and pursue higher levels of education, you'll have to weigh a bunch of different things. Like, do you want to put in the time and effort in exchange for higher earning potential? And if you're still kind of on the fence, like you don't know which way you're going to go, getting out of jury duty may just bring you over.
Yeah. The possibility of getting out of jury duty, although everything I've been told could be wrong. It could be very regional. It might apply in some parts of the country and not others. I don't know. But in any case, I was able to be here today, which is great. I will be hosting the rest of the week from a bunker in another part of the country, because I do have to go to a wedding. But we have a pretty good plan, Pat, which I think should function well for everybody. So hopefully a good week of shows.
Yes, I think the plan is quite good. I haven't heard it yet, but I trust you, and I assure that things will go smoothly.
Pat will be notified at the last possible second of the plan in case he doesn't like it and otherwise would call out that day. So I tell Pat only at the very last moment what the plan is. All right, that's it for today. New show, new bonus show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.